There she comes.
If you want to let Rosalind get settled in, then
Yeah, I will. I'll be
the first
waiting.
applicant said he was on his way. If you want to hold another minute or two.
Yep, that's fine. Well, it's 5:30. We will call the meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order today, May the 16th, 2023. Roll call, we see that everyone is present except for Nate Treadaway. The approval of the agenda, everyone, we have two items on the agenda. Entertain a motion to approve the agenda if it,
I move to
Nothing.
approve.
a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Minutes from the previous meeting, April the 18th, 2023. Everybody had a chance to read the minutes? Any corrections, additions?
None.
Entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Mr. Code Officer report,
Nothing to report to the planning commission this evening, Mr. Chairman.
okay? Old business, is there any old business to come before the commission? Hearing none, we'll go to new business. Under new business, item number 1 is a request for a rezone from B2/PRD to R1A at 414 Davis Street. Mr. Code Officer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The subject property that's before you for this rezone request, this property is currently zoned, I actually have that rezoning wrong on there. It's actually B2 and PRD is what he's currently zoned now. He's asking to rezone this property to R1A, and the purpose is to develop this property into 2 single-family lots. They will be lots that qualify for the benefits of being inside the infill overlay district. So these lots will be roughly 5,000 square feet in size. Some of these are, well, both of these will be a little bit over that. They're both 50 feet in width. And you can see that if you can tell by looking at this drawing, Davis Street being here on the north side of the drawing, the houses will be oriented with the fronts facing Davis Street, and they'll be accessed from a shared driveway off of Bell Alley to parking pads behind the home themselves. It's a pretty straightforward rezone request. Complies with all of our goals and rules for the infill overlay district, and the recommendation is approval as submitted without conditions. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. I'd have to ask if there was anyone present to speak for this request. Oh, okay.
Made it just in the nick of time.
You didn't want me showing up before I spoke.
Give us your name, please, sir.
Excuse me?
Your name?
Brian Zeiss.
Okay, Brian, thank you.
Looks like Brad already presented a good bit of what I had to present, but this was kind of to show the areas around the property that I'm asking to rezone have already been, ones in orange are already been done and in construction. These are the 3 homes that I've already done on Bell Street, and then this is the area that I'm trying to get rezoned, and then he showed you basically the layout of it, but that's essentially there. And then as far as the homes that we're planning on building, I got a picture of the existing condition from the street, and then a few homes that I did on Bell Street and also down the road on Davis Street. So, you want to see any of this?
Did you want to see the photographs? I mean, we could.
Oh,
pass
yeah,
those
sure.
around.
Okay.
Start there. Mhm.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask the applicant a question, please? I'm going to ask the applicant, do you want to add these to the file since you didn't have photographs originally
I
submitted?
can, sure.
Okay. And if you don't mind, the ones you have today, I'll add to the file itself, if that's okay.
Okay.
Is that all right?
Sure.
Okay.
Nice. Are there any questions? Questions? Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Sure appreciate it. At this time, I'd ask if there was anybody present to speak in opposition to this request. Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion. The recommendation is to approve without conditions.
Move we approve without conditions.
I'll second.
Motion to approve without conditions and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion is carried. Request is approved. Item number 2 is a request for a conditional use permit for a telecommunications tower at 121 Victory Drive. Mr. Code Officer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The subject property is currently being used for a wholesale and retail sand and stone hauling service there in town. Formerly a concrete mixing plant there a number of years ago. It's currently zoned M1. And the request before you for conditional use at this property is for a telecommunications tower. And with the underlying zoning of M1, telecommunication towers are only allowed as conditional uses in that district and the B3 district in the city itself. And if you can tell on the plan behind you, there's a small compound drawn on there. I'm going to highlight that for you just so you can see that. So proposed is a small telecommunications tower compound on the south portion of this property. It's currently not being used by the operation I described. It's currently on the site now. They're proposing to place a telecommunication tower there. It's going to be a monopole, a typical monopole galvanized metal telecommunication tower that you see pretty much everywhere in the U.S. This one is going to be 150 feet tall. They're proposing to have 4 co-locatable carriers on the tower itself. It's a pretty straightforward tower design that you see around. So they are proposing a modest compound that would include the carrier service equipment at the base of the tower, and they're proposing to fence that in, and they include some like red maple plantings around that. That's all in compliance with your ordinance for those features, and they're proposing to access this directly off Victory Drive. If you remember the last drawing, you kind of can see it here to the left. They're going to come straight off Victory Drive into this tower compound. So I guess one of the biggest features of your ordinance is that you are required to place these towers. They have to have a setback from residences and residential structures, a minimum height of the tower itself. Basically, this one being 150 feet tall, the nearest residence is 150 feet away. And so they've obviously strategically selected that location for that purpose to meet our requirements. And the recommendation for the request is approval with 3 conditions. They're lengthy. I'm happy to read those if you would like, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I would, thank you.
All right. So the first condition is the proposed telecommunication tower should not be taller in height than described in the conditional use application and supporting documents. The developer shall submit a structural tower analysis with the building permit application. The analysis shall be signed and sealed by a professional structural engineer licensed in the state of Georgia. The analysis shall include a structural analysis, drawings, calculations, and supporting documentation that includes the following: tower height and design, including technical engineering and other pertinent factors governing selection of the proposed design. A cross-section of the tower shall be included. Total anticipated capacity of the structure, including number and types of antenna, which can be accommodated on the tower. Evidence of structural integrity of the tower structure. Failure characteristics of the tower and demonstration that the site and setbacks are of adequate size to contain debris. And the last condition is the developer shall provide satisfactory evidence that FAA, FCC, and any appropriate state review authority requirements for the proposed tower are met, or that the tower is exempt from those regulations with the building permit application. These are relatively standard requirements across many jurisdictions in the state of Georgia. This is a requirement, basically, that the code officer is asking of the applicant when they are going through their building permit to provide this information it's in the first requirement for a telecommunication tower in our ordinance. It doesn't specify what it is, but I've specified what the actual requirements will be based on other ordinances. So it should be pretty straightforward with those conditions. And that's all that I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. I'd have to ask if there's someone here to speak for this request.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Michael Powers. I represent the applicant, Atlas Tower LLC, Atlas Tower 1 LLC. And by fiat, I, to some degree, represent AT&T because that's the carrier, the mobile network operator that's engaged us to start this project. But as you saw from staff report, we're going to be building a site that's capable of housing additional mobile network operators or first responder equipment or other wireless communication needs for the city of Monroe into the future. That's part of our business model. We do that on all of our sites. So I'll just say a few words because I could talk an hour about this, but I just wanted to emphasize that Atlas Tower is working in conjunction with AT&T, and the most notable interesting thing about that is that AT&T is now a partner with the FCC's FirstNet responder network, and what that means is that in addition to the frequency bands that AT&T services their consumer customers with connectivity wirelessly, their antennas will also work with this first responder network with the frequencies that were designated only for the use of first responders. And it's kind of interesting to see it getting rolled out across the U.S. This has been a project started after 9/11 a long time ago, but we're finally seeing the network get built out. What that basically means is in the future, as your community has connectivity with FirstNet through AT&T's towers and equipment, they'll have special responders or transceivers, basically radios, phones, that aren't available to the public, and they work on different frequencies. In the event of any use of those frequencies, it would not be available to regular citizens without an application and some connection to law enforcement, et cetera. It's just a real jump forward in terms of technological application to that specific, super important civic function. The other thing I'll point out, just to say it on the record, because we are controlled, our industry is controlled by the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, we do comply both with all of your rules here locally and in the state of Georgia, but we also have to comply with all the federal regulatory stuff. So we will do a National Environmental Policy Act report on the site so that we are sure that there aren't plant or animal species that might be illegally or, I don't know, impeded or whatever. We'll also consult with, through that process, we'll also consult with your state historic preservation office. We'll do a study on basically the entire parcel and any special issues that might come up. That would be basically information sent to the FCC and could cause us to have to make adjustments if there was some issue found. So that's sort of in addition to your own regular local regulatory means. As for the conditions 2A, B, C, and D, I only have one comment, and that is that condition 2B, my request is that because 2B mentions information about the number and type of antennas that can be accommodated, that's not a problem. I thought you were asking me to actually show you exactly which antennas were going to be installed.
No, it's a total build potential.
Great, because I guess where I was going with that, I'll just finish my thought, even though it's not relevant, And that is that the carriers, the mobile network or operators like AT&T will come back to you through at least your building department to get a separate building permit to put their equipment both on the tower or on the ground. I like to say we do the dumb stuff and they do the smart stuff. Our project's concrete, steel, fences, stuff like that, and they do all the technology. So that'd be on a separate building permit as we go through the process. So yeah, with that, I think I'll stop, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
When are you starting construction?
Good question. I would love it if we could get this project done this year. That's the intention. So assuming we can get an approval here tonight, we will report back to AT&T. We will also still have to go through a somewhat time-consuming process, particularly with the NEPA, the National Policy Act report. Those can take up to 3 months to receive the entire report, partially because of Native American notification and consultation with state offices like SHPO. It just takes a while. So I would say we could conceivably be regulatory complete in 3 to 4 months from the moment this is approved locally. So what does that get us to? That gets us to construction start realistically maybe October 1st. And that's if everything goes great. We've seen the last 3 years, we still really aren't out of COVID when it comes to supply chain issues and having equipment available for construction start. There's still currently an amazing backlog of electrical components, step-down transformers, conductors, plastic, conduit. That's really backing things up in a way that I never imagined 5 years ago.
I'm just curious, do these towers have like a capacity limitation?
Sure. So the
Traffic for so many years, or how that, is it a capacity thing?
So we have our own building code. All towers have a special national building code. It's TIA 222 Rev G or H. It's a letter thing that they, as they move through the letters and get, we're in between G and H. And so that code requires us to meet very specific engineering standards based on the loading that we design it for. So the amount of concrete in the ground, the weight of the concrete, thicknesses of the steel, the ability to manage your highest known wind speed and gusts, and I'd say ice, but you guys don't really have ice loading here. All of that is and earthquake, actually, earth seismic movement is also calculated in that code. But it's all dependent upon what we tell the engineers we're going to put on it. So our standard is to take 4G equipment's pretty much the heaviest equipment that's being used in the US right now. Their antennas are big surfboards. They're up to 8 feet long and 2.5 feet wide, 4 to 6 inches thick, and they're typically 6, 9, or 12 on what we call a rad, a 10-foot vertical space. So we assume 12 of those are antennas plus the amplifiers and the other assorted equipment that's actually installed on the tower. And then we just this is just how we do it. We take that number and we multiply it by 400% on the assumption that we might want to do that 3 more times with 3 customers that we don't have right now. So that's how we get that. There was another sheet that showed 4 carriers on the tower. We just tell the engineers we're going to do that 4 times at each segment of the tower. So this tower is 100, and the highest spot is 150 to 140, 40 to 30, 30 to 20, and we just have the engineers assume that loading for all of those spots. And then they tell us how much concrete, rebar, how the tower is going to be actually constructed, and so on. And then there's a lot of duplicacy with the mechanical engineering because almost all of these, well, all of these towers that we buy are from the Midwestern states. I'm not sure why that is. There's some on the East Coast and the West Coast, but in any event, we're buying our towers to our specifications in a state that's neither the state of Atlas Tower nor your state. So they'll apply both the national code standards for structural capacity. They'll also apply and stamp for their state because that's where they're located. Our engineering firm is on the other sheet. Our Colorado engineering group will also check those numbers. And then because we have to comply with Georgia, because we're in Georgia, we will engage a Georgia engineer as well to check those specifications. So it's kind of triple checked. It's not really by design, but that's how it works out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? I will ask if you're in agreement with all the three conditions that's stated on the.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I just want to point out, just to be super clear, 150-foot pole with a 4-foot lightning rod, sorry.
That's right.
Where's my brain tonight? And I wanted to confirm that that's going to be okay with the setback, because that theoretically could.
Yeah, the way I looked at the I mean, I assume that in your location of the structure and having all my previous conversations with your company in
Sure.
the past, I mean, the lightning rod, I was not technically calling it part of the structure.
It's
'Cause
not.
that's not the function of that. I mean, it could,
Yep.
it's not, I mean, if there's a failure, that probably is gonna break off.
Yeah, there's
before
not
a-
much to the lightning rod.
I was gonna say, that's not, I think the intent is that the actual physical structure of the tower is 150 feet, and there's a lightning rod attached. So I didn't have an issue with that at all. In my analysis, I noted that as well, that the lightning rod, I was not counting that in the setback distance.
Perfect.
I mean, if you'd like, I'm sure you have room, if you wanted to adjust it 4 feet, you probably could. I mean, it's not that.
Prefer not to.
Yeah, I'm saying, I don't think that's,
Appreciate
I don't think that's an issue, and the condition, I worded it in such a way that if you needed to move this tower, then it, obviously, the distance to the residence, our code is gonna dictate that. So if you have to, if there has to be movement, then you can maintain the 150-foot height, and you're gonna have to maintain the 150-foot distance from a residence.
Understood. Thank you. Yes, we do accept all of these conditions in section 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Okay. I would ask at this time if there was anyone present to speak against this request. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve or not approve, or approve with conditions.
Motion
Move
to
we
approve with
With
conditions.
the conditions stated.
Motion to approve with the conditions stated.
Second.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, the request is approved. If there's nothing else, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
And a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.